I'm going to do a little update here. I the last time that I kind of did like a shop update, it's not really a shop update. But it's an update of the things that have been going on that I've kind of told you about. One of the things is that that dump trailer that was in here, I fixed the brakes on it, and I took it over to Canada. Um, I was kind of a little nervous about it, having never done it before. I don't know whether a lot of you guys are familiar with crossing the border into Canada, but it can be. I do it quite often, and when I say quite often, usually once a week at least. Um, but I live right next to the border, so there's a lot of things that I do over there that I go over there for. Um, but anyways, sometimes crossing the border can be a 20-second conversation with immigration and customs. Other times, um, they can have you there for an hour sometimes. If they are in the mood and want to scan your vehicle and or whatever. But anyways, I was kind of a little nervous, having never done it before. The other thing is again, I picked this trailer up in Long Island and I brought it back here, um, and the trailer, when I picked it up and brought it back from that guy, wasn't plated. I just threw a set of plates on it, and not knowing what Canadian um, hierarchy is in regards to bringing a trailer over, whether you have to register at the time. When I went to the customs broker, I wasn't sure whether I was going to get a plate for it or not. So, and there was kind of when I took it over, a DOT push going on in the States, and I also found out it was going on in Canada. I didn't find out by being stopped. I wasn't stopped, either in the States or Canada. But my kind of anxiety and worry about taking it over was for naught. I pulled up to the commercial booth. Um, if anybody is familiar with the trucking, commercial booths are elevated way off the ground. So if you're in a pickup truck with a trailer on the back of it, you kind of actually got to get out of the truck, hand your passport and everything up to the inspector. I told him that I was taking it over, and the paperwork was supposed to be at the customs broker. And the first thing is he says to me, "You don't have any paperwork for the trailer with you?" And I says, "No." And I says, "Again, I've never done this before, and I kind of thought it was strange, but I was told that all the paperwork is at the customs broker." And he says, "Okay." Hands me back my passport. Says the truck parking is around the other side of my booth here. You park there, go into the building. There's a map that'll show you how to get to the customs broker that you're looking for. Go to the customs broker, pick up the paperwork, and come back and give it to customs, and they'll process it for you. Well, I went into the building and looked for a map for the customs broker and couldn't find one. Then I went into some place, it was actually another broker, and asked them if they knew where the broker that I needed to be to was located, and they did not know. So I started a venture, a walk. That walk took me about 2 blocks into the little city by the border, Canadian city. I actually had to walk into the city where the broker was located, 2 blocks away from customs. Um, Pick up the paperwork, take it back to customs, gave it to them. They said, there's a waiting room around the side, go in there and we'll be with you when we are able to process the paperwork. I go in there and there's truck drivers in there laying on benches, talking on the telephone, watching TV, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be here forever. Probably 2 minutes later, the guy comes to the window and he says, hands me the paperwork. I happen to be sitting next to the window. Hands me the paperwork and he says, you're good to go. And I says, okay, do I give this paperwork to somebody at another booth? And he says, no, you're good to go. Gave me the paperwork and I left. Never even looked at the trailer. Never looked in the trailer. Just gave me the paperwork and I went. But so that was very uneventful. I took it to this guy. Now, I took it to a guy that didn't actually buy the trailer. I took it to a guy that does work for the guy that buys the trailer, does fabrication work for him. And had a very cool shop, a Mennonite. The guy was a Mennonite, and he built tanks. Built tanks for some company, a tank company, and they were pretty huge. He had quite an operation, and it was on his farm. And to get to his farm, you had to go down 2 separate dirt roads. And after I saw the tanks that he built and the plate steel that he used, I'm thinking there has to be flatbed steel trucks coming in here all the time, delivering stuff to them down a dirt road to this little Mennonite farm type thing with this huge fabrication shop. And I mean, the shop was huge. Not only one shop, there was 2 shops. He had another shop where he stored stuff and had this gigantic paint booth in it to paint these tanks. Now, I asked him, and he said most of the tanks that he built is for grain. The tanks are steel, but he did have a couple of stainless steel tanks that were being shipped to, I think he told me, Pennsylvania, and he wasn't positive, but he thought maybe it was some type of a brewery or something. But some of these tanks were pretty big, probably upwards of 15, 18 feet in diameter and 60 feet long. And the guy just had this amazing shop in the middle of nowhere. So then that's that for the Canadian trailer. Then I told you that I had to go to Colorado to pick up the RV. I'm not sure if I ever showed you actually pictures of the RV, but I'll throw some in here of the thing. I did pick it up. The trip was uneventful. I didn't get a lot of good footage of it. Actually, it was pretty terrible footage. I didn't set the camera up in the window, and it seemed like I did probably most of my driving towards the evening time, but I did shoot some footage that I could, and hopefully at some point in time I will go through it and figure out what's salvageable out of it and post something up. But anyways, I brought the RV back, a 67 Ford Camper Special, meticulous. It's a Western vehicle, so there was no East Coast issues with rust and the salt that was used in the winter. But I brought it back to a guy pretty close to me, probably about 10 miles away, who has a asphalt business. He lays roads, driveways, stuff like that. He is a collector of Fords, and this was a Ford, 67 Ford. Now, he has a couple of drag cars, but he also has some show cars. One of his show cars is a 38 Ford Coupe with a V8 flathead engine in it that is just pristine. But he bought this camper with the intentions of using it to go to shows and when he drags his other cars to pull the trailer. And when we were unloading it at his place, he was kind of looking at it underneath it to figure out how he would get a hitch attached to this thing and to pull his trailers with. No, his trailers are pretty big, enclosed trailers, car hauling trailers. So I delivered it to him, and all was well. Probably about a week later, he called me up and he says, I sold the RV to somebody in Michigan. Would you be interested in hauling it out there for him? And I says, yeah. I'd be glad to. But anyways, he sold the RV. I went back to his place, picked it up, and took it out to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I had talked to the guy that I was pulling it out to and kind of got, because he asked me some questions about maybe hauling some other things for him, kind of got the opinion that he was I'm not going to say an antique car dealer, but let's call it a classic car dealer. When I get to Ann Arbor, it was at his house, and he wasn't a classic car dealer. He just bought this thing because he's a Ford guy. He does buy other vehicles, though, so I actually might be doing some other work for him. But it turned out, I'm always curious about when I meet somebody about what they do for a living. You know, I've always been like that. I'm not a big talker on socializing talker, talking about politics or the weather or whatever most people talk about. I'm not into that. So, but my thing is kind of finding out what people did or do or used to do. And the guy that I delivered it to was a big guy. I mean a real big guy. Not physically big, strapping. He was heavy. So I asked him what he did, and he said, "Oh, I work for Ford." And I says, "Okay, did you work in an assembly plant?" And he says, "Oh, no. I worked for their engineering division." And I says, "Oh, that's cool. So you're an engineer?" And he says, "Yeah, but that's kind of not what I did for them. I was in their racing division. I spent my entire career with Ford in their racing division." And I'm thinking, yeah, wow, how cool would that be? So he says, "Once you get this RV unloaded off the trailer, will you pull it in the driveway for me? And then I want to take you in and show you something in my garage." And so I pulled the RV into his driveway for him, and he took me in and he showed me, and I'm not sure what it is. And this is kind of the point of where this little story is going. It was a Ford, 30s vintage Ford, and it had the long flat roof line that kind of dropped off towards the back of the vehicle. So whatever year that was, I'm not really sure. It didn't have a rumble seat. There was no like trunk rumble seat area. The roof line extended all the way back past the back seat and then kind of dropped off straight down. So if anybody knows what it is, just post it in the comments and let the viewers know. But this car had been built by Ford, rebuilt by Ford, let me put it that way. It had a 280, a small block Ford engine. I think it was a 289, probably punched out to 302. It had dual 4-barrel carburetors on top of it. It had some chrome-plated exhaust headers that had somebody's signature inscribed onto it and welded onto the headers. The car was absolutely meticulous. It had the front end out of a Ford Mustang. The rear end also was out of a Ford Mustang. The coil springs were all chrome-plated, as was the traction bars in the rear. Just, it had a moon roof on the thing. The interior was all done. It had air conditioning in it. And it was built by Ford. And somehow, when he retired, whether he bought it, they gave it to him as a retirement incentive, it was, he ended up with it, and he's saying that it was the last classic car that Ford Racing Division built, or probably will ever build. But anyways, it was just a fascinating conversation with him, and a fascinating car to see. Now, I'm not really a Ford fan, but I mean, I was awestruck by it. To know that it was actually built by Ford Racing Division, this classic car, and it was really cool. And that's kind of where the story's leading. I meet some fascinating people, and in hindsight, my grandson says, man, you should be kicking yourself in the ass for not grabbing a camera and interviewing this guy. It would have been a fascinating interview, a fascinating story, just a fascinating story just to see this car. So anyways, I took the RV out there and delivered it. I also had another load of racking that I had to take and deliver, and I've got some other projects going on. I've got to start building those grate covers for the trench drains in the building for the landlord. I've got some posts that I've got to modify for a guy that builds homes, jack posts like for homes, that I've got to modify to meet engineering specs. I've got some other things going on too, so let's talk about the tractor. I've got some footage in the can on the tractor, me replacing the seals and doing some other things. I have not really done a lot of work on the tractor this week, and there's a couple of reasons for it. I'm kind of just sitting back and thinking about it. I had put those O-rings onto the tubes that go into the TA, and when I seated those things, it peeled them off. And at the time, I was comfortable with that, because the fit is so extremely tight in there that I was comfortable with it. But I got to tell you, one of the viewers said to me, you know, a lot of material came off of that O-ring. You probably should replace it. And he recommended when I replace it, maybe putting some soap liquid, dish soap liquid, onto them as a lubricant to reseat them. So I've kind of got that in the back of my mind. Should I pull them tubes back out again? And man, do I dread pulling them tubes out. They're such a pain in the ass to get out and then get back in. Hopefully, if I do it, and I'm kind of swayed towards doing it, but I still want to think about it for a little bit. If I do it, hopefully the O-rings that go into the TA on the inside of the housing haven't been ruined or anything, and I can pull them out part way and just replace the O-rings on the outside. And I should also note that when I put those O-rings onto them tubes, that were the 6 that were different from the rest of the O-rings. Now, there are some other O-rings that are kind of the same size, but they're smaller in diameter. The actual O-ring is smaller in diameter, and I actually tried putting them on before I put the O-rings that I assumed fit on the tubes on. And they seemed sloppy in the groove, so I didn't want to use them because I didn't think it was a good fit. So if I do pull the torque amplifier tubes back out, I've got to find at least 3, possibly 6 O-rings that will fit them tubes from a non-stock supplier. Hopefully I can get them like over the counter at an auto parts store, or I hate to go to IH because they charge so much for everything. Not that they would charge a lot for an O-ring. It's not going to break the bank, but it's just the point of paying their exorbitant prices on stuff. So I'm probably going to post the tractor video this week, but again, it's going to be just petty stuff. Maybe some work on the brakes and some work on replacing the other axle seal. I do have a video. I'm going to be posting a video on repairing a pallet jack, and the reason why I'm posting that video is not that many people have pallet jacks, and not that many people, less people would have a need to repair the pallet jack, and it's not the hydraulic portion, it's the bottom portion of where the rollers on the front of the tines roll into the pallets. I actually had to kind of redesign how it went, or not redesign, but reconfigure it because it had worn out so bad. And again, it's not a video about necessarily repairing the pallet jack. It's a video about how you can repair things without having to throw something away or get replacement parts, which I don't even know if replacement parts or something like that would have been available. So not so much about you having to fix a pallet jack, more about learning to do repairs on things that you might have instead of buying new parts or throwing it away. But anyways, I'll bring you back. Probably I'm going to post this video on Thursday. I might also, I'm probably going to post the pallet jack repair video on Friday, along with whatever I have in the can for the tractor, and then I will, with that tractor video, I will also make up my mind and let you know what I'm going to do about those tubes and those O-rings, whether I'm going to be pulling them out and repairing it. So I'll bring you back, and you can see the rest.